Hello, what I'm going to be covering in this video are the flow control statements used by Python. So flow control statements can decide which Python instructions to execute under which conditions. These flow control statements directly correspond to the symbols in a flowchart. In a flowchart, there is usually more than one way to go from the start to the end. The same is true for lines of code in a computer program. Flowcharts represent these branching points with diamonds, while other steps are represented with rectangles. The starting and ending steps are represented with rounded rectangles. So what we have here is we just have a flowchart of determining what the letter grade is for a student test score. So we have the diamonds, which represent the branching points, and then we have the rectangular looking things which represent what the grade will be based on which path you follow in the flowchart. And again, you have either a true path or a false path that you can follow in this flowchart. So the first thing we're going to talk about are if statements. So the most common type of flow control statement is the if statement. An if statement's clause, that is the block following the if statement, will execute if the statement's condition is true. The clause is skipped if the condition is false. In plain English, an if statement could be read as, if this condition is true, execute the code in the clause. In Python, an if statement consists of the following: the if keyword, a condition, that is an expression that evaluates to true or false, a colon, and then starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the if clause. So what we're going to do next is we're going to open up a new Python file and we're going to code up our flowchart. So first we'll set sales equal to a specific amount, 60,000. Then we're going to go ahead and write our if statement. So if our sales are greater than 50,000, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and print out, you have earned a bonus. Okay, so if you look at our if statement on the next two lines, we have our if keyword, then we have our condition, then we have the colon, and then we have our if clause, or the statement that will get executed if our sales are greater than 50,000. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and save the file out to my file system called FC1. I'll replace the existing one, and then I'll go ahead and shift F5, and what we have is you have earned a bonus. So what happens is when sales are greater than 60,000, they're greater than 50,000, so you have a bonus gets printed out. If I change my sales to 50,000 and I run the module, what will happen is nothing will get printed out, because if we look at our code, basically if we follow the false path, nothing happens in our code. So the other nice thing about your if clause is that you can have multiple statements or blocks of code that get executed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple more lines of code within my clause, and then my bonus amount will equal my bonus percentage times my sales, and then what we'll print out is you've earned a bonus of, and then I'll use concatenation, and then what I need to do is I need to convert my bonus amount into an actual string so I can go ahead and display that amount. So I will go ahead and run the program, head and save it. So nothing happens in this case. So let me go ahead and change my bonus, and I will go ahead and run the program again. And basically what happens is my bonus will go ahead and get calculated. Okay, so we've gone ahead, we've looked at this single if statement. The other thing that you can do is you can use something called the Python Tutor to go ahead and visualize the execution of your code. So let me just go ahead. What I've gone to is a site called pythontutor.com, and I'll click on the Python Tutor link, and all you have to do is you just copy and paste your code into the screen here. They do not have it updated for 3.7, but we can go ahead and just select 3.6, and we will go ahead and visualize execution. So we're on our first line. It goes ahead, creates a variable called sales and saves $1 million in there. We'll click on forward. It'll go ahead and create another variable called bonus percentage, saving the 15% in there. We'll click on forward. It'll calculate my bonus of $150,000. It'll click on forward, and it'll go ahead and display that bonus. So if I go ahead and change the sales amount to say $49,999 and visualize my execution here, it creates my sales video, and then what it does is it checks to see if $49,999 is greater than 50. It isn't. So what happens is nothing happens and the program terminates. So when you're working with your Python code, I would highly recommend that you use the Python Tutor, especially when you start using flow control statements within your Python code. So what we're going to do next is let me go ahead and we're going to look at the else block. So an if clause can optionally be followed by an else statement. The else clause is executed only when the if statement's condition is false. In plain English, an else statement could be read as follows: if this condition is true, execute this code, or execute that code. An else statement doesn't have a condition, and in code, an else statement always consists of the else keyword, a colon, and then starting on the next line, an indented block of code called the else clause. So let me go back into Python, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead, create a new file, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to code up that flowchart. We'll set temp equal to 90, and then if temp is less than 70, since most people in Arizona are cold, if its temperature is less than 70, I'll change it from 40, and then I will go ahead and print out a little cold, isn't it? And then what I need to do, I need to get back to the beginning or my left margin, so I can just go ahead and hit the backspace key so I can add my else clause, my else statement, and then what I want to do in my else statement. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and print out nice weather we're having. Okay, so I will go ahead and save this file. And I will just call it FC2. Go ahead and save it, and then I'll go ahead and run it. So basically what we have is we get nice weather we're having, basically because 90 is not less than 70. So the code underneath our else statement gets executed. I'll change the temperature to 69 and then run the module again. And what happens here is the other block gets executed. So a little cold, isn't it? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a couple more statements underneath both my if clause and my else clause. And then I'll do the same thing underneath my else. And we'll go ahead and run this. So what happens now is both statements get executed for my if clause. And if I go back in and update the temperature to 90 and then run the code, the other statements get executed. And again, we could copy and paste this code into our Python tutorial and then watch the execution. So 90 is less than 70, it is, so we'll drop on down to our else clause and we'll print out the two statements. And then if we update our temperature to 60, visualize execution again, 60 is less than 70, so the statements, my if clause, will get printed. Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover in this first video. In the second video, what I will be covering is the elif statement. So we will be talking to you very shortly.